Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Roy Kessel. We're excited to have you with us here today for Sports Philanthropy webinar number 4. And Jeff Golner has graciously agreed to be with us today, talking about his STEM sports program and the best ways that we can use the STEM sports curriculum to engage students. Right now, we've got everybody stuck at home and sitting around, and I think it's a great time to connect everybody to each other and find ways to create opportunities for learning and using this time productively. Before we let Jeff get started on his presentation, I wanted to just run around. I know some of us have been on calls together before, but I thought if we could just have everybody go through quickly and just do a brief little intro. We'll start with Bob, and then Kayla will be on deck.
Okay, Bob Dickinson, located in Atlanta, Georgia, Executive Director of STEAM Sports Foundation. We focus on future workforce opportunities for young people who want to get into sports and entertainment through STEM-related backgrounds. Focus primarily is on conferences and raising scholarship monies for those students.
Terrific. Kayla, Alicia will be on deck.
Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Kayla Bradham. I'm in Milwaukee. I'm the VP of Community Development for the Sports Philanthropy Network. I'm also a high school language arts teacher and a mom to 8. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Alicia Peters. I'm the Project Play Western New York coordinator. We grant out for sports and want every kid to have the opportunity to be active through sports. We do not currently link anything to STEM because we are funded out of the Roxy Wilson Junior Foundation, and they have a separate pool of funds specifically for STEM education. So we primarily just work on the sports piece, and none of our grantees include STEM, although our counterpart in Southeast Michigan, there is a boxing gym that does incorporate STEM into their boxing program for students.
Okay, thank you. And we have one more person on the call with a phone number. 724 phone number. Nope, nobody there yet. Okay.
Unmute.
No, they're actually not on mute, but that looks like what we have for right now. Looks like a couple other people are just registering as we speak, so hopefully they'll hop on there shortly. Jeff, why don't you go ahead and you can start doing the presentation, and if we get more people when we get a break, we'll have them introduce themselves.
Yeah, you bet. Everyone can hear me, correct?
Yes.
Never assume, right? So yeah, Jeff Golner here. I'm calling from Phoenix, Arizona. We're locked and loaded here at home, and grateful for Roy and the opportunities to spread the good word about what we do. Real simple, we provide K-8 curriculum that uses a K-8 STEM curriculum that uses sports as our real life application. So we go into typically into classrooms, science or STEM classrooms, and sometimes into PE classrooms, as well as after school programs and camps with our curricula. It's supplemental. It doesn't mean that it's used 5 days a week throughout the entire, say, half school year or full school year. It's complementary to the efforts that the school year curriculum is already being enforced, if you will, in K-8 classrooms. We're in about, last count, we're in 47 different states, so we're almost countrywide. And we have a lot of interest actually occurring overseas, as I've shared with Roy before, which has been an extremely pleasant surprise and more of a rewiring in my little brain here, because STEM to me is such a U.S. foreign thing. It is that when I first started getting calls overseas, I thought, what the heck do they want to do with us? But it's the same issues, as probably Bob even knows, and others, that we need to enhance and strengthen our workforce so that these youngsters, when they're ready to be part of the workforce, they go into it with STEM skills, because the jobs are going to outnumber the humans that can fill those roles. and that's I think that's really most important thing. I never want to assume whom I'm speaking with understands STEM. Most know maybe what the acronym means, but may not understand exactly why it is in place. The corny line or joke that I make, but it's probably true, is that in the time that we'll sit here and talk together, despite what's going on obviously in our world, technology is advancing so quickly that STEM jobs, if you will, are being created as we're speaking. We don't even know the titles of those jobs yet. So that's really where I have to remind my staff all the time that, take the sports piece out, make sure we always stay, quote unquote, at home with STEM, and let that develop. And then we get to use the sports aspect as the real life application, which we're having great success with. So maybe to get you a little bit of, again, there's kind of my boilerplate, if you will. That's just who we are. We provide turnkey K-8 supplemental curriculum. And as I just mentioned, there's a couple of manual covers as examples of what we do. And,
I do it this way.
sorry, we're hearing somebody type. Not sure who that could be. So real quick history. This is more than you need to know, but the company was launched with STEM BMX here in Phoenix, in the metro area in Gilbert, Arizona. Houses USA BMX. In fact, a lot of Phoenicians don't even realize that they're here. They'll be here for a little while longer. They're actually building a complex for USA BMX in Tulsa. But that's kind of where it started. And we followed up with volleyball and basketball soon thereafter. Some other sports came. We received registration for STEM sports. The video I was going to show you is our partnership with Skyhawk Sports. I don't know how many people are aware of Skyhawk Sports. They're an after-school and summer camp sports program. We have a licensing agreement with them whereby they're in 20 different states with franchisees dotting all around those different states and cities. And they run programs at schools, Parks and Recs programming, et cetera. Anywhere that really has a facility they can run their, let's just use basketball as the example, a basketball camp to teach kids basketball. Well, now they made a differentiation for themselves from, say, like NYS and other youth camp programs by adding STEM sports. That was the hope. I was going to show you a video to kind of kick things off, to have you better understand all that we do. There's that kind of international thing. At first, it has started in Morocco, and then we've got several piloting happening, though obviously I think there's probably a big pause like we're experiencing here in the States, pause in Japan, Australia, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia, Canada as well. And what we're ardently working on right now is two things. One, the sports that I've previously mentioned are all being revamped. We're going to print this week. We're very excited about that. Any curricula always can be updated. I'm sure the day we go to print, we're going to realize, oh, we should have done this, or we should have done that. But that's okay. We've done a really long, lengthy job of adding some elements, which you're going to learn about here really quick. And we're really proud of our volume 2. Volume 1 of STEM golf, hockey, lacrosse, tennis, baseball, and softball are forthcoming, as well as a K-2 STEM multi-sport. It's really going to hone in on motor skills, spatial awareness, things of that nature. A lot of kids are probably learning what 6 feet mean now. Come on, you guys can laugh. I don't see any smiles. Okay, so I thought one of the ways we try to disseminate not only who we are, but how and what we do is just kind of breaking down what a lesson kind of looks like. Not knowing, Kayla, you have 8 kids at home, so obviously you're probably challenged with giving them some information and things to do. So taking this maybe from a little bit too granular, but I don't think it hurts to kind of explain what we provide. We'll also talk about the free lessons that we're campaigning outwardly right now when I get near the end. So I could do it in reverse and you guys can sign up for the free lessons, but quite honestly, it's a little bit more manual where we then send them after we get the request. So when we follow—
Hey, Jeff, just before you keep going here, we had
Sure.
a couple more people jump in, so I'd love to have Judith and Erica introduce themselves.
Please do, go for it.
Judith, are you available?
Might be muted.
Okay, maybe we'll Erica, how about we jump across to you?
Hi, this is Erica. I'm with Aerostar Avion Institute, and we teach students aviation, but I'm looking how we can combine your platform with ours. And I'm in Illinois.
Okay, thank you. And we'll have Judith then introduce herself at another break when she's
Yeah, you
available.
bet. Okay, great. So again, kind of granular, but I think it's really important to point out that these are mechanisms that schools, and teachers really need, obviously for planning and just for understanding what this is going into. And I don't doubt that this would be useful information for the parent at home, who certainly probably has, well, dare I say, less experience than the teacher. Now, with all that said, and we're going to kind of jumping ahead, there's a slide that kind of explains who actually teaches this, and we'll get to that. But I wouldn't be wasting your time if I said you on this Zoom call can do this. Some of it might look a little bit intimidating, but I think once you see the sequence of lesson, you'll understand it. And more than anything, your children or those who you're pushing this out to will be very helpful. What's a common term sometimes we hear? Parents that have their kids come home with homework and they just don't understand the homework, yet the kids can kind of help them understand maybe the algebra that they're having to go through. So it's kind of similar. This is kind of like homework that you kind of scratch your head, but if you collaborate with your child, I think you'll get it. All right, obviously this first slide kind of indicates that time needed to execute that lesson is listed right here. There you are. So you got time, and we're gonna the lessons that we're offering one lesson from each of our curricula for free. I'll get to that slide so y'all can see how to go about doing that. Pretty simple. Standards, not super important for y'all at home, but do know that yes, the purpose behind the lesson and the objective is aligned to standards, in this case, next generation science standards and Common Core, and as well as, and in some cases, PE education, because the kids are moving and they're going to be doing some action. Are they playing a 5-on-5 basketball game? No. But are they going to be doing a certain aspect of the sport? Absolutely yes. So that's where we get to tie those together. It's worth pointing out NGSS, Next Generation Science Standards, give or take, they're in the 50 states, about 26. There might be, it might have moved north, and it actually ebbs and flows periodically. Are accepted are the standards for science used in about half the country's states. Here I am in Phoenix, Arizona, and we are not a next generation science standard state. I still sell a lot of curriculum here locally. The reason there's a differentiation between next gen and what might become, in this case, Arizona state science standards, the variance is very, very little. And if anything, it almost is political. Quite honestly, it is. Arizona has not adopted the NGSS because they don't recognize or agree with NGS's evolution standards and their climate change standards. So can we talk about politics, right? Yes. Otherwise, it's not an issue. And I've never had anyone say, can't buy you, can't offer you because you're not aligned with us. It's just not the case. Supplies. This is in the event, obviously, we were to do a transaction with a school. One of the things that we've really ultra focused on is becoming very turnkey for schools. Yes, there's an upfront cost for a school to get our kits, and they get, as you see here, this being the multi-sport kit, you get lots of stuff, but what the most important aspect is it's turnkey. It lands on school, it gets into that classroom, and teacher does not have to go make any additional purchases. Everything that they need is right there. That's a really important aspect. I think most of us can agree. I don't doubt it. Here in Arizona, again, as one of the examples, is we're constantly reading about underpaid teachers and teachers that are utilizing their own funds to outfit their classrooms, and the numbers are around $500 on average. I'm sure it's probably north of that, if possible. So that we take a lot of pride in that. School's expense is really in this kit, and then when it lands in that classroom, he or she, teacher, does not have to make any more acquisitions. The lessons that I'm going to be showing you take for free, we really mitigated that and said, okay, if we're going to offer free lessons out for a parent to use at home, we really can't ask them to go buy receiver's gloves for the football exercise or a radar gun for the volleyball lessons. So we found lessons that really are a happy medium and maybe have to utilize a basketball and a tape measure as an example. This is a report that we've received throughout the year. That number is 37 administrators, if you will, across the country got back to us. That's been a really, really difficult thing, is to get the teachers' attention to give us their feedback. However, the feedback has been based on volume 1 that's been in the marketplace. And like, as I mentioned before, volume 2, we call our volume 1 B+, and we know after doing several pilots, B2 is going to be an A+ product. And so these numbers will just move north. We're very happy with these numbers, and we actually equate them to B+, so they kind of equate to how we think it performs. But overall satisfaction levels is we're really happy with. Grades, who's this for? As I mentioned, we're doing a multi-sport for K-2. Everything else that we have out in the marketplace is 3 through 8, but there's differentiation in our lessons, and there's 3-5 lessons and 6-8. That's a big deal. Maybe that's where we were underperforming, in that we had a lesson plan that was 3-8, and we've changed that up, and you'll see the differentiation. We'll get into this a little bit more, and we'll spotlight basketball a little bit so you have a better understanding of what we do and how. Who's teaching? So I think, without having to read all the way through this, we know that teachers, science and STEM teachers are our largest population of those that are administering our curriculum. We know that PE teachers are as well. We know that PE teachers and science and STEM teachers are collaborating in some cases too, and helping each other out. The biggest piece that I could tell you is that we wrote the curricula to match the needs of the student, in so much that the student can help lead the lessons. Why? Look at that last paragraph. STEM skills are all about leadership, problem solving, critical thinking, and collaboration. So if we inject that thought and that process in with the students, we've learned that that's been very successful. Classrooms might get divided up into maybe 3 groups of 10 if it's a large group of 30. That all, in that sense, automatically you can create leadership in your groups. You can deploy the student that is a leader already, and a lot of times we engage and say, bring up the student that needs to lead or hasn't led yet, and put them in that role. So the way we've written, you should find there should be some ease even to you as an adult that may not have any teaching experience. And then even our, I was mentioning before, our program with Skyhawks. Skyhawks is made up of really coaches. They might even be teens. They might be recent high school graduates, all the way up through a retired teacher. And they've had great success doing that thus far. In fact, I couldn't believe they did this. And at first I was like, why'd you do that? But then I realized, wow, that was brilliant. But when we launched some curriculum with Skyhawks this past summer, and I kept getting these daily reports. The coach would report back just the day how it went. And I'm getting these great reports from a gal named Izzy. And I finally asked, I said, who's Izzy? Because these reports are fantastic. She was really conveying how well the students were engaged, how the questions they were asking and the cognitiveness was really coming through. And I said, who's Izzy? And they said, Izzy's 18. She just graduated from high school. And I thought, okay, why the heck did you do that? And they said, to prove a point. And that was to our franchisees that essentially anyone can lead this and run this. So that's just phenomenal in my eyes. And we've seen that experience. Up here, you see engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate. The 5E instructional model is very popular, if you will. That's probably not the right term, but it's kind of the new way that science lessons are being deployed. And if you really look at those words, you can kind of see how it builds upon each other. And STEM sports took it to another level, and we added extend. The layman, that'd be almost like extra credit, but it just takes the learning, especially if you're like in a 3-5 lesson, and maybe you're doing it in football, and maybe at some point you wanted to extend it and really challenge the kids. It might mean that you take it from, okay, you've been doing all this work in yards, let's do the work in feet. or let's do the work in centimeters. And so now you've added this great new layer of math, and you've really extended what they've learned as an example. Maybe I should do a little quick pause. Are there any questions? I'm going to keep going, but I can continue. And Bob, I think this next one will probably interest you. So one of the cool things that we did, Roy and I met at through Beyond Sport. Beyond Sport's an international entity that really, I think the two words really say what they are. They really kind of deal in the space of how sports kind of affects society in so many different categories, kind of beyond the field or court of play. And so about a year and a half ago, I was sitting in their September meeting. It's usually when we all convene, and I'm sitting there, and when I talked earlier about STEM and making sure that we really stay focused that's kind of our foundation is STEM, and then we get to add sports, and it's all about jobs. I had this epiphany. I'm like, why aren't we relating any jobs that the lesson is all about, so that kids' eyes can be opened up to the possibilities that exist in sports? In my case, that have a STEM, obviously, that are STEM related. Our optics are going to be sports, so that's just who we are, obviously. So as you can see, it just has an identifier. These 5 jobs that are listed here. This lesson happens to be related to caloric burn, and so we're actually inducing or engaging the kids in some health matters, almost to the point of, hey, what did you have at lunch? If you had that slice of pizza, let's do some math and figure out how much sports, in this case basketball, I believe, you would have to play to burn off that piece of pizza you had at lunch. We're not going to change major habits, but we're definitely going to introduce that to kids at a young age. And then we're going to talk about the jobs that are related to that, because guess what? Jenny or Johnny's dream might be to play in the WNBA or the NBA. We also know the possibilities are not great because of the percentages against that. Yet all these jobs are certainly something that they could do down the road should they not make it on the court of play. We're really proud of this piece. Assessments. As part of, I mentioned the 5E program. In front of 5E and at the end of the 5E, at the end of the sequence, beginning, the kids would actually take a assessment, real quick, digital, just to kind of gauge kind of where they're at. And it's actually the same assessment they would take at the end of the lesson. This is a piece of information that instantly goes to whomever fills it out, typically the teacher would, and at least use their email address. Parents can do the exact same thing, and they'll receive the information as soon as that child completes the assessment and hits submit. They get the answers to those questions. We do too. It's good information for us. We encourage no children's names and just use their identifier so that we can kind of cume all that information and learn from the lessons productivity, if you will, and certainly see how the student learned throughout that lesson's progress. Worksheets, a key piece to this, especially as we're talking about doing this work at home. You'll see that when we offer these free sample lessons, or if obviously it's a manual that goes into a school, we provide all the worksheets that are key to the process of learning. Engineering design process. This is just a big STEM element, building on something, creating something, but going through the process. I can be corny and I don't mind, but I tell kids all the time, I say, this is, some people overemphasize it and say STEM is all about failure. No. STEM allows for failure because it's a process. And so kids might be working on building a field goal post out of craft sticks, rubber bands, etc., and make it stand with very limited items. And so they're going to have to really work on a process, and most likely, it's going to fall down and fail, and they're going to have to try again. And I tell the kids, unless you're building a bridge, you're okay, you can fail. It's all good. It's part of the process. Still no one's laughing. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Don't build bridges. Mindfulness. We kind of kick our lessons off. This is kind of a introduction to who we are and what we do. But it also really kind of sets a bar, if you will, or a level playing field, to use that jargon, that, hey, teachers, this is different. You probably haven't done something like this before, and being mindful of what's going to happen through the process, and let the students lead it. Students, if you're not good at sports, that's okay. Or if you're not athletic, that's okay. You can still do this. Because what could happen, there's all kinds of, I don't want to use the word stereotypes, but what could happen is the quote unquote jock thinks they've got this, but in the back of their mind, they also know they're not very good at math. Or totally vice versa, the non-athletic student who excels at science still doesn't think they can do this. Not the case. We've done a lot of testing, mostly with those that are really science-centric. We've got the luxury of working with a group of kids here in our market called Chief Science Officers, and they're like the elected official for their school as it relates to anything science and STEM. And be honest with you, a lot of them just kind of, the sports they do might be esports or video games, and they kind of don't look at us very optimistically. We've run them through some programming. We've come out of that programming and we said, okay, what do you think? We want your honest opinion. And they've come back to us and said, this was cool. I see sports in a totally different light. I get it. This works for me. Pretty much across the board. So we're really happy about that. And, you know, you have some naysayers, but for the most part, the majority have really come back very positively and affirmatively at what we do. There are a whole bunch of slides in this package that show every one of our sports in every content, basically a breakdown of every lesson. What I thought we would do, I'm not going to do all of them, that's just not necessary, but I thought we'd use basketball just so we kind of really quickly peruse it and you all can see, just move you all so I can see. You can get a snapshot of what we're all about. Let's ultra focus maybe a little bit on 2.1 because that is the free lesson that we're giving out currently. We actually kicked off a massive campaign this morning with a national press release notifying the media that we're doing this in the hopes that we can just really push out these lessons for everyone's use around the country. In the case of this 2.1, kids are going to learn. Sometimes I'll walk into a classroom or if I'm live in front of an audience, and I'll walk in and I'll dribble a basketball. And when I push on the basketball, I say force, and then I let the ball bounce and then drop on its own, and I yell out gravity. And that's kind of how I walk in. It's kind of our warm up, if you will. Force, gravity, as I'm walking in. So kids immediately kind of get into the mindset of where we're going and what we're trying to do. So there's a lesson there all about that. We do some measurements with regards to the court, understanding basketball. We actually give in 3.1, we actually cut our basketballs into little pieces so the kids can actually uncover and discover what a ball is made of. Most know that there's air inside of there, but they also don't understand maybe how weather and temperatures affect the ball and how it reacts. I've had conversations with a former, almost like a Harlem Globetrotter. She was a one-woman act dribbler who did performances at halftimes of NBA games. She no longer does that. But she explained to me how brilliant that lesson was because, yes, as she traveled, she definitely had to retune the balls, so to speak, based on where she was and the weather. Here's another set of the last 4 sets. We talked about the EDP, Engineering Design Challenge in this case. We've all probably at some point as kids or maybe not built catapults where we flung with crap sticks and a spoon objects around the room, but there's probably no educational value to that. Well, we placed that here, and we also relate it to the shooting motion. Our catapults are actually the shooting motion. Shot tracking, if some of you have heard of the app called Home Court, fantastic app, free on the Apple and iOS system that is remarkable in that all you need is the app and a basketball and a basket with a backboard, and through AI, it will do some tracking for you, and they've allowed us to use that as a component of 7.2. Advancement in shoe technology has been very popular, so kids understand the evolution of the basketball shoe and the why behind it, right? Why is it going up our ankle, and what's that mean? So we're really breaking down that cognitive. And that's all 3-5. 6-8, you'll see a lot of very similar titles and objectives, yet obviously we're going to be doing things differently And rigor will be a little bit different for the older set of kids. Introduction of Newton's third law. When we talked earlier about the balls and the air inside of them, we actually have hair dryers inside of our kits, so the kids can heat up the basketballs, and we encourage them to plunge them in ice water and really understand what that difference looks like on the molecular level. There's Newton's second law. Engineering design challenge will become a little bit more robust, calculating calories and a lot of math there to understand that. And they'll even look at a food label to understand that a little bit better, which will hopefully introduce that to them for the, maybe not the first time, but hopefully the first, or maybe the first time about what that information is. Whoops. Sorry about that. I jumped ahead. And there's the basketball kit right there. I was doing, it's worth telling you guys, I was doing a presentation at the Arizona Coyotes Arena less than a couple months ago. And I decided that with these kids, I played STEM sports show and tell. And I had a radar gun, which is in our volleyball kit. And when I popped it out of this like hidden box, a kid yells out, "Hair dryer." And I was so excited because my next item was going to be a hair dryer. And I just blew the kids away. It was pretty fun. So we're really proud of what comes in that kit. Reusable over and over and over again in a classroom. So there's a lot of great use out of that. Okay, how do you get the free stuff? All right, so the free lessons, real simple. In fact, we just changed the website. You can just go to stemsports.com and you'll see a little button to click on to get the free lessons. A really quick form. We're doing it kind of manually. Can't quite automate everything. So every night I'm kind of pulling all the information down and pushing these out. We've had several hundred already requests, and we've gotten some good feedback that it's going very well. And in addition to when you fill out this form, you'll also receive a free non-sport specific lesson called Playing with Precision. Our theory behind that is when you hand a ball to a child and you say throw it, typically they're going to try to throw it really hard and far just to kind of show their strength. And we introduce accuracy and the science of accuracy in Playing with Precision. I will tell you, we're also working on another free lesson, the science of stretching. No kid really wants to do that and doesn't understand the why part of that. And we're going to break that down about muscles and muscle tears and the importance of all those sort of things. So I think that really wraps it up. And you'll see we can offer this. All the other lessons are here from a table of contents piece, so you can understand all that we do. And I'm happy to take some questions.
Jeff, this is Bob.
Yes, Bob.
Absolutely love what you were doing.
Thank you.
We started about the same time you did, and we took a look at developing curriculums, and for various and sundry reasons, we decided not to go down that path and focus more on a 9th grade through college demographic. But I really am impressed with what you have developed. I think a couple of comments and a couple of questions, if I may.
Sure.
One of the comments you said earlier about, those students who weren't necessarily good athletes, wondering whether there was, a real opportunity here for them or an interest in students who weren't good athletes. And we took the position early on that that's exactly the point, because what careers that are being developed aren't necessarily for people who are great athletes. They're people who are who have real interest in sports and entertainment as well. But they're the computer scientists of the world and the data analytics people and the engineers and the neurophysicists who would like to know how to contribute in the sports and entertainment world, but nobody has showed them how to do that. So we have, really kind of agree and see the point of, catering to students who don't necessarily have the athletic skills to be the on the field or on the court star, but love sports and entertainment and are just trying to find ways to contribute through what they are good at. So give you guys a high five for understanding that.
Yeah, a couple.
Go
Okay,
ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, but I was gonna. Yeah, so a couple things I'd say would be maybe to help you understand, like at our kid athlete level, we know that obviously kids still have ways to go to hit that workforce and those possibilities. I strongly believe though the introduction of concepts of jobs, whether they be sports or not, is hugely helpful. I mean, it's almost like a why not proposition. In our case, we say, heck, I'll have to use myself as an example. So, for a number of years, I said I wanted to be a doctor. You couldn't pin down what kind of doctor I wanted to be. But maybe if I was introduced to some concept that interested me, that would have helped me, if you will, gear my education towards that desire. So the other thing, yours truly, I worked in sports, right? So I worked in sports for about 12 years. And but I didn't figure out that I wanted to work in sports till about 2 months before college graduation. Finally had that conversation on the couch going, okay, you're about to graduate. You still know what you want to do. And I came back to what I like, and that was sports. Ardent fan, always kind of understood what was kind of behind the scenes. I knew I wasn't going to be on the court or field of play. And I worked in Major League Baseball for about 12 years with 2 different teams. And that was my passion. And I found that. So I do think that potentially, like you mentioned, there might be someone that knows, a student that knows, my sports isn't going to take me anywhere as far as the playing aspects. But I love what you said, the data analytics or IT or some sort of technology-driven student that can then apply it to sports. And boy, oh boy, are we seeing a huge boom in that industry. Data analytics in every sports are pretty phenomenal of what's happening there. And you just can't ignore that. So there's huge opportunities there. And I was talking to someone recently, and maybe it was Roy, it might have even been you. I can't remember. Someone said to me, and they said, Jeff, you very well might develop the next general manager just because the 5th grade student sees the opportunities and all these numbers and this data and these stats they're going to be learning. And then maybe subtly in that little corner of your sheet, it says STEM sports jobs, general manager. And all of a sudden that lightning bolt might go off for that student. I call them little head explosions. So that's what we're hopeful. I also think that maybe we're going to develop an Olympic gold medalist because the athlete had to go to their science class, and that day it happened to be STEM volleyball. And they'd never played the game before, but it spurred the interest. So these are hopefully not too far-fetched that we're going to develop that next gold medalist, general manager, you name it. We'd be happy to be a part of that process. And the other thing, too, I was going to mention really quickly is the kids that learn differently, okay? That could be typical students, but, some are really, really, really good at learning. Not that there's a lot of textbooks anymore, but, really through the textbook / screen time method and retaining in class. I kind of classify them as left brainers. And the ones that are right brainers that really will learn better hands-on, like it's exactly what we do, will benefit from our curricula. It does not leave out the left brainers. They're still very capable of learning in a hands-on method. And then those that learn even differently from them and call them, unfortunately, they're classified as the special needs population. We don't have a lot of data that tells us it's being used there. I do know that one of our schools locally did put some basketball in both a 5th grade classroom and a special needs classroom. And I thought that was just brilliant. And we've had lots of great conversations with Special Olympics for the same purpose. They've got a great program called Unified Sports where their typical children or students are actually working alongside their Special Olympic athletes. And you bet this can, I think, absolutely work for them in a collaborative sense. And so I think we kind of have it splayed out pretty well, if you will, to cover just about everybody.
Jeff, do you?
Go ahead.
Oh,
No, go ahead, Gail.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Bob. Jeff, one comment for you and a question, if you don't mind. One of the things that I thought was really interesting is that you talked about, using this curriculum to develop general managers. Roy and I were in a team meeting yesterday, talking about the difference between managing and leading. And my comment and kudos to you is that I truly believe not only is this background teaching kids how to manage data, but it really is teaching them how to use sport to lead their peers in a 360-degree dimension. So
Yeah.
kudos to that for bridging that gap, because that's difficult. Question for you, and it says my internet connection is unstable, so I hope I'm not freezing on your end. Question for you is, as I look at this, and as I said, I teach high school, this seems very easily adaptable to the upper grades in high school. Do you have a vision or a goal to program at a higher level than elementary and middle school?
Yeah, we've certainly looked at it, and we're not saying no to it. We decided to go younger. We decided to go K-2 from our 3-8 as our next step. And I'm never going to say never, but you did kind of hit on something, and that's kind of the curricula's expandability and scalability. It can be elevated up, and some have realized that, hey, I could probably reposition this for my high school audience. It does take some work. And I don't want to, there are some great teachers, absolutely, that would do just that. Well, unfortunately, the issues that we've run into, especially when we were just a 3-8 lesson plan and we didn't have the differentiation between 3, 4, 5, 6-8, was our assumption was that the student or the teacher would prepare to present it to their audience. And you hate to say wishful thinking, but yeah, it's just that. My running joke here is that I keep getting denied for 26-hour days when I apply, and the same can be said for teachers. They just don't have the time to do a lot of preparation. So when we prepared V2, version 2, we really went to that extra mile to make sure. That's why we engaged the sequence of lesson like we did, because we knew this will really help them. The worst thing amongst us people in curriculum, a lot of times what happens is schools will order it, and it lands on that school, and boy, if someone's not going to see it through, it might sit there and collect dust. So what was super important to us, yeah, we're a for-profit company. Yes, we want to make a transaction, but boy, oh boy, it'll be so disappointing to find out, and we've heard this a little bit, oh, we haven't gotten to it yet. It's, it's still sitting XYZ place. Like, oh, you got to be kidding me. You're not using it. This is such a great opportunity for so many different reasons. None of which, by the way, I kind of touched on it, but the physical activity notion is huge. Granted, when they do, when they review basketball shoes, no, there's no physical activity in that. That's a classroom exercise. But the majority of our lessons are definitely going to take them away from their desk, put them on their feet, and they might go shoot baskets for one of the lessons to come inside and actually figure out their own field goal percentage, otherwise known as division. But if they just present it as division on a worksheet or on a chalkboard, it's not going to be that fun. But if the kids get to go up, play basketball, come back in and figure that out, they've got the best of both worlds. They got the academics and they got the physical activity. Very rare are you going to find STEM and physical activity. It just doesn't, those two just don't really go in cahoots. My joke, again, with kids is maybe when you have to go chase down a wayward drone, you get physical activity when you're doing STEM. And they all like, yeah, that's probably about it. But no, so yeah, going back to what you said, Kaylee, you're spot on. I do think that we'll look at that down the road. It's just another method of making our curricula even more rigorous and meet those students where they need to be met at the high school level. And we've also talked to a number of districts that have engaged their high school students to help with the younger kids and have them teach or have them participate in the after-school program that uses STEM sports. So lots of flexibility there. But thank you.
Great. I think Bob had another question.
Yeah, I don't want this to turn into a Jeff Bob conversation, so I'm going to just ask another one real quick. In terms of your curriculum, who writes it? And in terms of funding, how are you guys funded?
Yeah, this is great questions. The funding one's really easy. You're talking to the funder. We're a for-profit company. And so we've just kind of been doing it self-funded. And we rely on the sale, quite honestly, to schools and school districts when they take us on and add us to the curriculum. We're in that crazy situation right now, not knowing what's really going to happen. Schools are closed. We're guesstimating, just like everybody else, that hopefully, while there is some e-learning and some webinar and some virtual learning going on right now, that administrations are starting to refocus a little bit on next year. This is the time of year that they're looking at next school year. They're planning their budgets. They're making curriculum decisions, and they're planning on their spending. So that's our hope, that self-funding goes away a little bit, and we can rely on the fact that there's some revenue coming in. But we're okay. We're hanging in there. The curriculum writers, great question. So we rehashed all of that when we actually started the V2 rewrite a year ago. It's been pretty ironic how it takes a long time to kind of get there. We have enlisted a great team of curriculum writers. They're technically independent contractors to us. Some are in the classroom as we speak, or would be. Others have been there and have gone more either an administrative route. We actually had one that was definitely doing more administration work, and then she went back into the classroom, and it kind of slowed our progress down, but that was okay because it was important that we had a consistent voice or two that wrote our curricula. And she's currently she moved from Phoenix up to Colorado. She's one of our main writers, and she's a 6th grade science teacher who coaches the basketball team. So it's almost like it couldn't get any better. She knows the NGSS like the back of her hand, and she's able to figure out, just here's a little bit of our formula. We don't write a lesson and then try to find the standard. We really look hard at the standards and then look at, okay, how can that be correlated to a sport and its physical nature, if you will, and how we can actually make that happen. So V1's lessons, most of them came and progressed into V2, and in some cases where they were totally reworked because the standard application was super important to us. These are what students, teachers, schools, and school districts are being judged on, how they align to standards when they get tested. And so that's where we totally parallel and align with them. So the curriculum writer and writers, or writing and writers, is paramount to who we are and what we do. We've got a great group that's behind that. And we're actually heavily recruiting a couple more because we think there's opportunity now that teachers are out of the classroom. And when you go into summer, that's usually when we pick up the new ones because they're on a break and they're looking for extra work. And we do a really good job of screening them to see if they fit. And we've had great success so far with that.
Great, thank you.
Fantastic. Any other questions? All right. Well, Jeff, I think you've given us some great information. I know that these slides were really helpful, and I think giving people the opportunity to take a look back at those. There's a lot of terrific information contained on those slides to let people understand. And I think as Jeff and I have spoken over the course of the last year, one of our goals is to help get this type of curriculum and program into so many different organizations. And really one of the reasons for setting up the Sports Philanthropy Network, so opportunities like this where smaller organizations may struggle to find somebody like Jeff. They just wouldn't know that he exists. And I think it's a way that we can help get this in front of so many kids. And I know when I was growing up, a lot of these concepts were taught in a very dry fashion, completely disconnected from any type of reality and certainly from any type of sports. And I think, as Kayla mentioned in our conversations the other day, we were talking about the fact that so much of what's done in education is completely out of context. It's not put within the scope of how it's being really utilized and applied. And all of these concepts, as a sports fan, as a kid going through sports, it will just make a lot more sense. It will just be a lot more interesting for them to learn in this type of fashion. And I know organizations like Erica's are utilizing things like this. Alicia, I think that there's so many organizations in your group that would benefit from having this type of thing. I know Heidi works with a lot of organizations as well. So we'll put our heads together and see where we can go and how we can help get this in front of more people. I want to thank everybody for coming on. I encourage you to look at the rest of the schedule. We're continuing to add things every day. We're getting more and more topics and more feedback from people about what they want to see, what they want to learn about. As I tell everyone, we've got this time now, which is fairly unusual, to be able to effectively learn, communicate, take a step back and think about what we want to do to help grow our organization and improve what we're doing. So that's what we're trying to do. If you've got topics, please let us know. We're putting together surveys that we'll send out as well so that you can privately give us the feedback about what you like and what other topics you'd like to see. I encourage you to look at our social media channels. We're on all of the main ones that are out there, so you can see what we put out, what's continuing to come out. Every Monday we put out the Sports Philanthropy newsstand, which has a summary of news and articles from the prior week, as well as upcoming and past podcasts and webinars, and a little bit of humor at the bottom in the days that we're dealing with, and some of the topics, as well as some little motivational graphics and things that we find. So I encourage you to look at those, to share those, and feel free to reach out. Again, let us know. We're here to serve this community. We want to know what's important to you, who we can connect you with, and how we can help. So thank you to everybody for coming. Jeff, thank you very much for your time and terrific presentation. And we'll sign everything off from there. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff.